of the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee. Go around and introduce ourselves. I'm Steve Olenoff, the chair.
And I'm Gino Colucci, the consultant helping with the plan.
How do you like it?
I love it.
Yeah.
Ken Aries, Operations Director, School Department. Brian Gorman, Planning Board. Tony Mullen, Westwood Youth Soccer.
Mike Black, Town Administrator.
Nicole Banks, Recreation Department.
Karen Skinner-Catroni, Conservation Agent.
RJ Shear, Conservation.
Todd Sullivan, Conservation.
Charlie Donahue, the School Committee.
Michael Gay, Youth Sports.
Abby McKee, Town Planner. Nora Loughnane, Director of Community and Economic Development. Dan Delaney, Recreation Commission.
Everybody's putting their sump pumps into the catch basins.
All right, so we have the minutes. Believe it or not, the last meeting was May 16th. And the reason we haven't had any meetings since then is because we've been writing this thing up. And so now the main purpose of this meeting, let's see what the agenda says, is to review this and make recommendations on this. Are we following this?
The
Well,
Open Space
this
and
is the
Recreation
draft.
Plan update. This is the draft. The goal is to bring this to the planning board before the end of the year. Abby has actually just posted a hearing notice for a public hearing by the planning board on December 11th. So that is our goal, to get this to them. Anyone on this committee still has comments on the draft that they'd like to see incorporated, we should discuss those tonight.
Before anybody comments, I just want to note that there are a couple of other things that are still needed, and those include 2 maps. There is in the draft right now an open space and recreation lands map, but we're updating that, so that will be replaced. And then the final map is the action plan map, which will use the open space and recreation lands map as a base, and then add notes and arrows and such to represent not all the recommendations of the action plan, but like the most significant ones. And then the other significant piece, and I want to talk to Mary Ann about this a little bit, is in the appendix, the ADA section is not part of this. It's 95% complete. The only things missing are, I need to add a section on Lowell Woods that's missing. There's not a lot if you don't know what the ADA section is, it consists of 2 parts, the administrative part and then the inventory of properties. And the inventory, looks at, it only applies to locations that have actual facilities, not conservation lands, because there's nothing to evaluate. But Lowell Woods does at least have unmarked parking spaces where you can pull over, and so I thought that should be included in here. And then for the administrative part, there are a couple of letters. One is to verify or designate the ADA coordinator, and then secondly, a letter from the ADA coordinator just stating that the town, repeating the town policy of non-discrimination against disabilities and all the other sectors that are not discriminated against. So those, and I can provide drafts of those to, that can just be put on stationery. The other part of it, though, is the grievance procedure in the administrative section. I found the grievance procedure in the personnel plan, but there's not one that I could find for someone with a disability who has a grievance against using one of the facilities. There's kind of a standard grievance policy in the state guidelines, which essentially is pretty simple. It says if you have a problem, contact the town administrator. If you don't get it resolved there, you can go up to the selectmen. So that's something that just would need to be accepted. I don't think it would do anything different, but in case you do, that would need to be changed. So that's the only part, that would complete the ADA section.
And you know, what I'd like to do is just send it out to the whole commission and just get some feedback from them. A lot smarter people than myself, so, and then if they, see if they have any questions.
Okay.
We just had a meeting, I should have sent this to him, my apologies, but I can send out if you've been for that.
No apologies, because I haven't sent it to you yet.
Okay, all right, so I haven't missed anything, okay.
So where does the ADA section go?
It goes in the appendix.
And is that, will that be the only thing in the appendix?
No, the survey results and the
Okay.
summaries of the workshop, those will be in there as well.
All right, so we have, has everyone looked at the minutes from the, it says March 16th, but it should be May 16th, 2018 minutes? I noticed that Ian and Nicole were going to bring additional edits. Did it goes in, and did that happen?
It did, yes. And it was received right after and they were incorporated.
Okay. All right, so do I have a motion to approve these minutes as written?
I motion
Yes.
to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes are approved. So, do you think we should go through this section by section, or has,
Before doing that, we do have a couple of written comments we received. We received some comments from the Conservation Commission, and we also have a written comment that we received from Charlie Downey. So I thought it might be helpful to start with those in terms of concrete. Everyone should have a copy before them. We want to start with Charlie's. It's entitled Major Recommendation, Adopt CPA. Charlie, you want to
Yep,
walk us
sure.
through that?
I was more responding to page 1, the first major paragraph, and it's, I'll briefly read 4 sentences that exist here right now. The major recommendation of the Open Space Recreation Plan is for Westwood to adopt the Community Preservation Act. The CPA provides for a property tax surcharge of up to 3% that is matched by the state. The extent of the match varies. The funding generated by the CPA surcharge and match could be used to pay some of the other actions supported by the office, the OSRP. So my concern with it was, this was brought before the town meeting in years past, and it was killed by maybe 100 votes. It was killed because they asked for 3% of the tax you pay. So if you're paying $10,000 in taxes, they're asking for $100. So I feel putting in, it's up to 3%, it's technically, you could go up to 3%. But of the 172 towns who've adopted it, they've adopted 1%. And a red flag is 3%. So there's gonna be people out there who will wanna kill this thing the minute they hear about it. And if you just say it's up to 3%, it's not misleading, because it is potential, but no one's crazy enough to ever ask for that, because they'd never get it through a town meeting. So what I tried to revise was more explanation. There's another thing in there that says that money is matched by the state. It is not matched by the state. That's wrong. So the paragraph that I wrote, as simply as I could do it, is attempting to kind of get somebody off the foot, say, this is just a lot of crazy ideas, but we are thinking about how do we pay for it. 172 towns have already done it. We could raise $700,000 a year on 1% tax. The way it works is, if your house is worth $600,000, they take $100,000 off of that, and then that tax is what you pay 1% of. There's an exemption for senior citizens or income. They pay nothing. So I feel, all of these groups who would read this thing get shocked. I've tried to, just simple, because it's very simple in the first paragraph, write something that is not gonna turn people off immediately, explain how it works. And there's 2 pools of money, it's not a match. Any use of the registry of deeds, that money is sent into the state. The 172 towns have all been drawing out of that money. We have never drawn out of it, because you gotta have the CPA in place in the state. It's $55,000 last year Westwood contributed to this fund, over $1 million in 18 years. We've contributed, never getting a chance to spend a penny of it. No one's a fairly conservative town. I grew up there. They passed this Community Preservation Act. And the reason was, at the town meeting, they said, all of this money we're putting into the state pool is being spent by Needham and Canton and Dedham. And they said, you know, are we stupid? Okay, so anyway, the brief 4 sentences there, I think, are misleading and could turn a lot of people off who would immediately start organizing to even oppose this, not knowing what it's about. I tried to put in all of the exemptions, what it is, what kind of money, and that was my attempt. I have no problem people changing it, but I just think that first paragraph could hurt this overall effort to someday pay for this thing.
Charlie, can it only be used by these groups listed here?
What groups are
Well, so
we?
you have groups listed: recreation, open space, historical, and community housing. What other groups can tap into this money?
The way that the Community Preservation Act is set up is, I could get into more details, but it's intended for groups like this to have right plans. So when you're through all of this process and you pass the law, another committee gets set up by the selectmen to basically decide how to spend the money available. So all of these groups that represent, just like here, will come up with what they would like to do. And if it's $700,000 available to us, they've got to come up, that's our money to spend. We have to come up with a budget of who gets what of all of these 4 groups. But the act is intended to fund these 4 groups, recreation being one of them, community preservation, housing,
Yeah.
historical thing, buy land, you know, all of that. It's a fairly comprehensive, and if you were here last time, I handed out a summary, I don't want to get into it now, of what other towns have done with it in 18 years. You know, and some people here have copies of that, which I felt later might be helpful to put in this document to explain to people what other towns like Westwood have done, you know, who we compete with, in academics and sports. They're all out there building swimming pools and tennis courts and buying land and all that. But these are the intention of the state law is to fund programs in these areas. And the money we raise in the 1% we get to spend, but the $55,000 a year we put into the state, we can access that by writing a grant proposal and apply for that additional money if we can. You're not guaranteed 55, but you can go apply for 100,000, maybe get that. But so far, our money into that state pool, the $1 million has been spent by other towns already.
So there are very specific limits. You could have open space acquisition, you could have outdoor recreation. Couldn't build a recreation facility, but you couldn't build
Indoor.
right, couldn't build a skating rink with it. right?
Needham
But
did
you
spend
can-
their money
And you can't
to
do
rehab their
maintenance.
town hall and to get bonding to pay for the town hall renovation.
So that was
they
his-
didn't build the town hall, but they got money to get bonding to pay for it.
Under historic preservation, so it's open space acquisition, recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. Those are the only allowed uses.
But just to clarify a couple of points, it is a match, there's a formula, and the towns that have a 3% rate, they get a bonus match. But for everybody else, it's, unfortunately, it's down, last year, I think it was down to 17%. The first few years, it was 100%. Because as more towns joined, it gets spread out, and then based on the economy and the number of transactions at the registry of deeds and such. But the other point that might be helpful in terms of what I think you're getting at is, it still requires a town meeting vote to spend the money. It's not like these groups just get free money and spend it on whatever they want. You
But they do
set
the
up,
homework to come up with the plan and go in, but that is the money that is available.
you set up a community preservation committee, and usually that includes representatives from the groups that have eligible projects. And then they make a recommendation, and town meeting has the final say on how to spend that money.
The thing you just said is that all of the money in the registry of deeds in Norfolk County went into the pool. There were 5 towns in Norfolk County into this act. They had access to all that money. Then as more towns get involved, the amount was constant and more had access to that money. So the early towns in on this thing got access to pretty large amounts of money that were collected by all the, because money was collected from the beginning of the act for the
Right.
registry of deeds pool.
But it's divided up statewide, it's not done
Correct.
county by county.
Correct.
So there, two things that need to be corrected here, because you can say it can access and it can apply, and it sounds like that's a maybe, but it's a definite. There is a match that will be received, so we wanna rephrase that to make it clear that we will be receiving that money that we don't now receive. And I think the 55, that's just from one registry, I think we wanna include.
That's from 1 year that Westwood contributed to the pool.
So that's Westwood taxpayer.
Oh, is that the Westwood
That's
money?
Westwood's use of the registry of deeds. It went into the pool.
Who paid that
If- if the
55,000? Was
fees-
it-
If you buy a house or refinance and your deed and mortgage have to be recorded at the registry, there's fees, that's where the money comes from, those fees. A
So-
portion of
So
those fees.
can we say that, can we phrase that somehow so people
Yeah.
know that this is money that Westwood residents are paying to the registry of deeds and is now going to that pool and Westwood is not? It says it's not taking advantage of it, but
Right,
it's not clear that 55,000 was paid for by Westwood residents.
yeah, so we have to make that clear.
The media handed this out, this is a chart of all the towns in Norfolk County, what they paid in last year, okay, so that's how that money gets. I'm suggesting a much more detailed of this whole thing later in the document. You know, I just say in the first paragraph,
Yeah,
I think you could get killed by,
right.
I just like people to get into it without wanting to propose it. Later, I think, there's a lot of things like what other towns are spending the money that we could go into, that I think somebody wanting to read this seriously needs to be educated
Right.
on the whole thing. So it's more than maybe
Right.
3 times what I just wrote here. I think he needs to fully explain it.
And would you put the senior citizen exemption in this first paragraph? That might be a good thing to include. Did you
That's,
say you put it in there and I can't see it? It does say it?
income and age exemptions are made for people who do not pay the surcharge then. So there's exemptions for people, you know, it's the,
Okay.
Oh, there it is. Oh,
We-
my goodness.
But
Sorry.
yeah, that needs a little bit of rewording. We can
It can be
select that.
adopted with
That's
us.
how the town adopts it, with what exemptions and what percent. So the town adopts it with, it establishes a percentage, it establishes the, what exemptions there are.
what I didn't emphasize here either is the last time the town tried to pass it, they asked for 3% on residential and commercial. And there were a lot of people against it and voted it down because we're trying to bring commercial people in, University Ave and all that.
Yeah.
So they said they're gonna kill us. Now, today, they're humming along down there. You could conceivably write it so it's 1% of residential and commercial. I mean, that's another potential thing you could do. And some towns have collected from both groups, some have just collected from one. But that's, I didn't put that in there to confuse people with it getting too much into the weeds.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? So, I mean, net long, you're gonna go ask town meeting eventually for a tax increase. I mean, is that, I mean, I just wanna be, I mean,
It's not a tax increase, it's, you should call it, it's a surcharge.
but,
So the town sets the tax, and then this automatically falls out, that percentage of it
but if we,
comes out.
because if we pass this, an average homeowner of 10,000 a year, will they pay more taxes?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
$100.
Okay.
So I think it's important to put in,
Okay.
you know, it's not, you know, the average taxpayer in Westwood, I understand, is around $10,000. They will pay $100 into this fund.
Okay.
So, and that, I think, if you don't give them the number, I think it gets frightening, you know? It's like, is it 1% of my house value? It's not that, it's 1% of the tax itself. And so I think this,
Yeah.
if we were to go on beyond this and try to get money, there's no other source of money to all the things we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Is it requires a lot of education, a lot of planning, a lot of work, you know, to talk about it further at a town meeting. But there's no funding available for much of what we're talking about here.
Thanks.
So I was sort of surprised to see that paragraph there right away in the plan summary. So I would just ask, do we want to keep that there? Do we want to go into more detail? Do we want to do this level of detail right at the beginning there, so people know right away?
I just responded because it was the first thing
Yeah.
there, and I said, you gotta explain more if you're gonna put it right to begin with. I do think it needs to be developed further later in the document.
Maybe just clearly, on the $600,000 value, you're gonna approximately pay,
$60. Oh, no, $600,000.
well, if your valuation was 600 Gs,
What was
you're gonna
the
pay
tax bill?
approximately $25 more per tax bill, right, per house?
What's
something like
the tax on $600,000 house? First of all, you take 100,000 off the value of the house, that's
Right.
another thing.
And then-
So it's now down to 500,000. What's the tax on 500,000?
It's
It's less than 10 grand, yeah.
$1,000, right?
$8,000 or $9,000, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's around $100.
But that's the part of it, selling it to somebody that it's.
Right, it just,
If you want fields and athletic things and all of this, that's, the other thing is, if you look at the 172 towns that have done it, it isn't all, Dover Sherbet, and Brockton has done it. Hardcore towns that don't have a lot of money decided we need these types of things.
right.
In fact, neither Dover nor Sherman has done it.
They don't need the
They don't
money.
need the
They
money.
just-
They don't need the money,
They just
right.
build them.
Just a comment, I think if anybody here said they're gonna have to pay anything else in taxes, they're gonna immediately shut you down.
Yeah.
So, one thing that would appeal to me is if you had a list of things that you could do with it. So, open space or what, because there would probably be something on the list that somebody would want. So now you have their attention.
I
Okay, here's
think you're
what we-
absolutely, if you're going to a town meeting, you're absolutely right. You
Right.
go in not
So
for that, but here's
here's
all the
what-
ideas
here's
we
what we
have.
like to do, and here's the way that we think we might be able to do
Exactly.
it. So they might, because I think as soon as you say taxes, I've worked in a department where they'll just scream at you on that. But if you say, this is what it would be used for, specifically for this, it might actually listen to you, just a thought.
Oh, it's excellent, absolutely, if you're gonna, the politics of going to a town
Right.
meeting, you better have something that,
Somebody will find something
wanna
on the
do.
list if they want. Just a thought.
So, here's a suggestion. We mentioned that major recommendation is for Westwood to adopt the Community Preservation Act, which would be a means of funding those four things. And then not say anything
Don't tell them
further.
what it is, yeah.
Yeah, then don't say anything further, just say, and which will be explained in section such and such in more detail. Then when we get to that section, then we get into this detail where we, we'll say, it's $100 if you pay $10,000 a year in property taxes or things like that.
and it wouldn't hurt maybe, when you say that, just lightly, is to say, we'd like to join 172 other towns
In adopting.
who have
the-
used this to
Who have
pay for
been
things
using
Oh,
like
yeah,
we
so,
want.
Been
so
using
what
the
you
money.
have written here is a very good start. And I think we just even have to say even more and just clear up a few things about it, make it very clear how it works. So, yeah.
But I
we'll
like
just
the
work on
joining
that.
172 other towns right up front in adopting the, what is it? Preservation Act, what does C stand for? Community Preservation Act.
But there's a level of detail that you just leave for pushing for the
Yeah.
adoption. I mean, the plan is to get us to move toward that direction, but then there's an effort to make.
We just
That's
wanna
what
make
he
sure they're
explained.
gonna be willing to listen to you and not just shut you up at the beginning. So, yeah, we do have to tell them what's involved, but,
All right, so everyone agrees to that change?
And then Karen, you had a recommendation from the Conservation Commission?
Yeah, did you vote no, John? No.
Is that been passed around?
Yeah, so we sort of went through it, and added what pages, some of the changes, some of the ideas that we had after reading through it. A lot of it's just sort of about, the conservation, the land management is kind of the biggest thing for us around town, the parks, the trails are all pretty much a mess. And a lot of what we're talking about is cleaning up those areas and focusing the money in those areas. And that was, we talked about it in ways, let me see what was one of the big ones that we talked about. The big one is number 2, where we strongly recommend open space goals to be improve management, increase awareness, and then identify, protect, and as part of it. And that was part of the goals that we sort of wanted to set out in thinking about the changes, or this plan. Did everybody see that on where it says off the goals at the start?
So you're on page 76?
Huh?
Oh,
Page 2 at the beginning.
Page 2 at the beginning, yeah.
Just reordering them, right?
Yeah.
Just reordering them a little bit. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Just.
Okay, on page 2, you have goals 1, 2, and 3, and you are suggesting,
Just redoing them a little bit.
yeah, that was my, so goal 2 should really be goal 1,
Yes.
Yeah,
yeah.
because the management of these areas is not done at all right now.
So that was a thing that I noted, that we really reversed priority. Originally, the plan was, let's get more open space, and we really didn't really mention very much about
Right,
managing it, and,
what we have,
or what, if we did mention it, it didn't get done.
right.
And so now the goal is manage what we have, and then, as appropriate, and as is available, acquire new open space land. And then the 3 would be the increase awareness.
The recommendation here is actually 1 to be improved management, 2 to be increased awareness, and 3 to be identify and protect and acquire. That's the recommendation of the Conservation
Oh, that's what
Commission.
we want, okay.
Yeah.
Say that again, Nora?
The Conservation Commission's recommendation is that the first goal under open space is to improve the management and condition of conservation areas. So on the draft, you have that as listed goal 2. Then they recommend goal 2 is what's listed as goal 3, increase awareness about Westwood's existing open space and conservation areas to encourage use and protection. And then they recommend that what's shown in the plan as goal 1 become the 3rd goal, identify, protect, and acquire lands. So it's really just the opposite of what our
Yeah.
existing open space plan is, which was looking to acquire immediately.
Because there's a lot of property out there that we're just not managing right now. So we can take care of those first and pick the lower fruit before we go after some of the heavy stuff. Then it was what, number 3, strongly recommend the mentions, where am I? The relation to the April 24th, 2014 Dedham Westwood Bicycle and Pedestrian Network Plan and map here and elsewhere in the OSRP.
So you're reading the letter that no one else has?
We handed it all
I
out.
should have passed around.
I'm confused.
It stopped, okay.
Okay, this is part, yeah.
Do you have any? There should be a couple more. Huh?
Are these in priority order, like the recreation goals? Should we be looking at them as
So
priority?
I
Yeah.
believe at the May 16th meeting, the discussion was to not put the goals in priority order, just to list the goals. However, Gino has since heard that we really do need to.
In the past, I have not seen any requirement that they be in priority order, but I've seen comment letters from Division of Conservation Services in 2 other towns, and in both cases, they said the goal should be in some kind of priority order. So yeah, I guess we need to have some, and I know that was a lot of discussion over that in the past, but.
I think I can't remember, was it the March meeting or the May meeting?
Yeah.
I think it was a representative from Hale Reservation who was here, who strongly recommended against prioritizing the goals, saying that they thought you would fare better in funding rounds if they were listed equal priority. But it sounds like the state is not allowing that anymore.
So I think recreation goal number 4 should move up. That's the new indoor recreation community center.
It's on page 2.
Would that move up 1 or move up 2?
4 and 2 are in our capital requests currently, so that's within our 5-year plan of what we've been looking at, so.
So should we?
I think,
should
2
we
and 4 should be the
flip-flop?
first 2.
So would 2 be number 1 or 4?
I mean, kind of 1 is what we do anyway.
Right.
Should 1 move down, since we do it anyway?
Completed.
Yeah.
Right, if it says continue, I think that's pretty explanatory that,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
you
think
know,
that,
we wouldn't want
I
that
would
as
be
a
good with
number
goal
one goal.
2 and then goal 4, so it'd be.
2,
goal
4,
2,
3?
Yeah.
Okay, so goal 2 now becomes 1, goal 4 becomes 2, goal 3 stays
Stays at
3,
three.
and 1 goes down.
Does 1 even stay on there?
I think it has to
Yes,
stay on there.
yeah.
So put it to the bottom then, yeah.
I think,
2 becomes,
I'd like 5 to
2
move up as
becomes
well.
what?
1.
So 5 becomes 4,
Yes, you would,
6
yeah, that
becomes
makes sense.
5, and 1 becomes 7.
So, yeah. 3 is kind of
Six.
interesting because that, I mean, we would do 3 as part of the other ones.
Who did
In
4
order
go to?
in order to
It's gonna be.
build a
Um,
new basketball court, you need a
Yeah.
property
It's
in order
2,
to
3,
build
Yeah,
it.
3 and, yeah.
1, so
Yeah.
2 becomes 1 and 4 becomes 2.
So the first goal is
Four.
expand
Becomes
opportunities for
2.
extended use of existing
Yeah,
recreation fields and facilities to
I
meet
just put it at the
demonstrated
bottom.
need. Goal 2 would be develop a new indoor recreation community center to better serve the community's needs for recreation programming. Goal 3, identify properties which might be available to serve unmet recreational needs. Goal 4, develop new outdoor recreation opportunities. Goal 5, develop a new indoor skating facility. And Goal 6, continue to provide quality recreational programming for all Westwood residents.
Is that, does that make sense to you, Mike?
It does, yeah. I mean, number 3 and 4 effectively are somewhat interchangeable, unless you're just talking about new recreation programs.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, there is the potential of having, depending on how big the center is, there's the potential of
Yeah.
having indoor basketball as well.
Yeah, so we should avoid vague words, so develop new outdoor recreation opportunities. Are you saying develop outdoor facilities or programs? Shouldn't we just say which?
Outdoor fields and courts, or what are we?
Which one are you on?
What is currently Goal 5, which will now become Goal 4. Because number,
Yeah,
the
that is-
identify properties which might be available to serve unmet recreational needs, that's more specific. And then this one is a more of a, kind of a catch-all. Is it programming? Is it, are we looking at facilities?
What did we mean by
Could you
fields?
give examples?
Uh,
Like example?
Well,
Examples basketball courts,
Yeah.
different courts to,
Pickleball.
Yeah, no, but I mean on this.
oh, on this.
Turf fields.
So people would know what you're talking
Could
about.
you just say including potential new facilities and additional programs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
should be more
I like
explicit.
that.
I like that
More
word.
broad.
Because ultimately, this will have to match what we're asking for.
Then we should check later on to see if the more detailed description lines up.
Yeah.
Several
Yeah, we
pages.
might wanna take a little bit more of a review
Yeah.
of this and just
Well-
provide feedback if anything else.
Yeah.
Anyone that, yeah, any rewording, because I saw a lot of places where we could reword it a little bit, get more specific, and some places it is kind of vague.
Yeah, I think the changes we recommended is towards the end of this plan. You'll see it. I don't know what it's called, the detailed goals or
The
action plan, yeah, that's where. So we should make sure it lines up now with the goals.
So let's get back to the Conservation Commission's list.
So
we
just
were
out of
on
curiosity,
page
are we
4.
changing the open space goals?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so open
Okay.
space goals
So
would now
that's
be,
2.
goal 1 on the plan is goal 3, goal 2 on the plan is goal 1, and goal 3 on the plan is goal 2. Then you have a comment on page 4, mentioning
Page 4, yeah.
Dedham and Westwood Bicycle and Pedestrian Network Plan.
Yeah, we strongly recommend the mention of the relationship of the 2014 Dedham and Westwood Bicycle and Pedestrian Network Plan and map here and elsewhere in the OSRP.
So, similar to that, I, under the, I'll have to see exactly where it goes, but under the goal, 2, the new goal 2, which would be increase awareness about Westwood's existing open space conservation areas, encourage use and protection. So one of the action items in that
Would be
need to add
the map.
is the new Westwood Community Trails Program.
Yep.
We just started, And so we wanna mention that and say that's a means of doing a lot of these things.
Okay, all right.
So the next, I see the next comment is about the maps being hard to read. I
Yeah.
think in the final printed version, we would like to go with a full size, not
11 by
full size,
7.
11 by 17 maps instead
Yeah.
of the 8.5 by 11.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And they'll just be fold-out maps.
okay.
Oh, sorry, is this actually going to be printed or is it gonna be just computerized?
It's going to be available in PDF on our website, but we are going to print some copies for the libraries and for the town offices and for everyone on this commission.
And then,
Can I make another comment? Just in the introduction, where they talk about the town of Westwood, like the third paragraph, the community setting and all of that kind of stuff, and I found this thing, it's in Wikipedia, describing Westwood to the world, you know, and I don't know if this might, and this is something that says, I don't know if we're over exaggerating things, but in July 2005, CNN Money Magazine ranked Westwood the 13th on its list of the 100 best places to live in the United States. Is that, you know, a little pushy? For describing our town, that's what they said. And then the other one in there, they said, is Boston Magazine included Gay Street in Westwood on its list of the best streets in the Boston area, as we talk about. And it's not included in the 13 scenic roads.
yeah, we mentioned that in here.
Clapboard tree,
We were-
and Gay,
why isn't
but
it
they
in
said
there?
it's one of the best, so anyway, that's what an outside group, if you're reading about the town of Westwood, that's what they see, and I'm not sure if it's a little pushy to put that in there, but it's,
So what page is that on you?
all I did is read it out.
Page
but,
25.
But no, what,
Oh,
thing
the,
about Westwood.
I was suggesting, it's like the first couple of paragraphs in page 1.
Okay.
It talks about the community setting, notices, talks
Well,
about
he
the
said
town,
it's a-
features of the
remember he asked-
town,
we
and
talked about this.
this is
Gay
how
trees, nothing
Wikipedia
designated.
Oh, no,
treats
no.
Westwood in describing it to anybody who goes into it.
Unless it's done.
So this is, page 1 is a summary, so probably we should put that in.
Well, if you think it's appropriate, it's there, it's in the public, it's,
Section, section, next section.
Suggest adding
so the
facilities
the scenic
subsection
roads,
title
that's,
for the bulleted list at the
you
bottom
already
of the
see that in
page.
one of the memos
So the bulleted
that's been
list
put in
of
here.
these
On page 6, I just wanted to,
facilities
there is a
is-
statement that says, nearly 41% of the survey respondents indicated support for the Community Preservation Act. Okay, that's, was a question asked for the public, and I always have questions about surveys, like, of the people asked that question, how many had any clue what the Community Preservation Act was? You know, I mean, usually you say, do we have an informed public about the Constitution of the United States, and do you support it? So, I'm not sure how helpful that is, because,
I believe the survey described the Community Preservation Act.
so
It was
you
a
can
short
assure these
paragraph,
people
but
knew what they were voting on. They understood.
Whether they read it before they voted is,
Yeah, well, I
There's
just
no way
think
of knowing that,
it's a
but it's-
volatile thing if I'm fighting this thing,
Mm-hmm.
saying, if 41% said they support it, then 60% don't. So how are you, why are you trying to shove this down our throat? I mean, that's,
well, we prepared a survey, the survey had a question
Yeah.
about it.
well,
The survey
I'm just
question was
saying,
asked and
that's,
those are the answers, so.
that is a question that requires a lot of detailed understanding than just, you know, recreation questions.
Also, I believe there was also, you could check off that you do not support it, and it wasn't everybody who
Yeah.
didn't say yes, said no. There were a lot of people, as to your point, who might have said,
Not sure.
not sure, don't know, but the opposition, I'm pretty sure was like something in the 20s, so maybe we should add that, you know, that number was opposed, 41 was supported, only if it was in the 20s, we could add only 22% were opposed or something like that.
Well, I just, most of the people I've talked to are very well-informed people in Westwood. They don't have a clue of the weeds of the Community Preservation Act, which you might want to understand that, why I'd be opposed to, because I'm old, or I can't afford it. And so I'm just cautioning that that could be a problem later with people wanting to oppose this initiative. You know, these people told you and I'm just questioning whether they knew what.
So the
they're
survey
voting.
itself will be in the appendix, and you'll see the question. If you didn't answer the survey at the time it was issued, you might not be familiar with it, but the survey explained what the Community Preservation Act was and then asked people if they supported it or didn't support it. It didn't have pages and pages, it didn't include the research that you've since provided on the CPA, but it did explain to them what the CPA was. You know, you never know when people are answering a survey, how much time they took to actually read that description.
And the point of the survey, of any survey usually, is to get a read for what people's opinions are right now, based on their current level of knowledge, not to be an advocate for any particular point of view, you know, which happens if you try to put too much explanation in it, it's kind of a leading question, you know, so, you know, you need to provide, if you just ask what CPA, do you support CPA, as you say, people don't know what that is, you gotta have some explanation, but without going into all the details.
Well, politically, I think it's a problem later.
I have a couple comments on the survey section as well. For number 3, I just wanted to point out that ice skating rink was listed in the survey, and people did put in their list of recreation facilities that they would like to see developed or improved, and we don't at this point in time note the indoor ice facility, and so I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that, because that did become one of our main action items later on. Also in number 6, I just want to clarify.
Sorry, what page are you on?
I'm on page 5. Survey. On page 6, are E and G the same thing? Or is that something different?
When, page 6,
Page 5.
Page 5.
oh, page 5.
Question 6. E and G, is the land adjacent to the high school and the land purchased from the first parish? I'm assuming those are the same.
It probably is, these were open-ended responses, so
Yeah,
people
that's
refer to
what
them
Oh, so
differently.
this
The
is what got
assumption is
listed
that
in.
they're talking
Okay.
about the first parish land, but they could be talking about the pond on the other side of the high school, or they could be
Okay.
talking about the fields behind the
So
senior
they-
center.
okay, okay.
We're not really sure because of the way they described it.
Okay, okay. I just didn't know if those were meant to be listed out as two different things.
On page 11,
Sounds like
there's
we could still-
mentioning
I'm
the
not sure.
Ponset River quite a bit, and I'm not sure if everyone's aware of, is that 1.5 miles from the Ponset River is in Westwood. And there is a canoe launch for the Neponset River in Norwood, that anyone in Westwood could get down and launch a canoe and go up and down the Neponset River as a recreational thing. You don't have to be a resident of the town of Norwood to use it, because it was put together by the Neponset River group. But it's worth, at some time, putting in there as a source of recreation to us, if you like canoeing, to use that launch in the 100 River Ridge Drive parking lot for enjoying the Neponset River, which we have a 1.5 mile in Westwood.
There are actually a few canoe launches spots upstream and downstream from Westwood. Should we mention that in here?
We could,
Yeah, well,
just to stay on track, why don't we finish up with the Conservation Commission comments and then go through from beginning to end, if anyone has any other comments on the page. So I think we're up to number 5, page 23.
Page 23, yep.
Suggest add.
So,
adding
within the infrastructure, that starts on 23, down to bullet points, adding facilities as a subsection of one of the bullet points.
So those bullet points are from the sentence, the facilities department is responsible for the maintenance of multiple town buildings. And then it lists the points you,
Okay. Did we miss that? Where
so
does it
it's
say
not all
that?
the facilities, do you see right before the bullet? Is a paragraph, it talks about the facilities department. It's responsible for the maintenance of multiple town buildings, and then those bullet points list what those buildings are. It doesn't include all facilities, it doesn't include fields and playgrounds, it's really just buildings.
So, I think we might have missed that. I think we might have whizzed over that.
That's what they're responsible for.
Improve the
Okay.
space.
just need to skip a
And
line
Obviously,
at the end of the paragraph
Mhm.
before the thing.
Okay.
On
All right, so number,
page, number 6, page 25,
Yeah.
and it's just really, raising a question that we just sort of talked about was, is Gay and Clabbertree Street not designated scenic roads?
so I.
Should they be considered on this list?
So I know, I remember specifically that the procedure we go through is, someone writes in from, usually a resident of the street, asking the planning board that they would like their street to be made a scenic road. And then the planning board looks at it and then puts it on an article for town meeting.
So somebody has to write in
So
first.
I would just add one other caveat. If I remember correctly, when the scenic roads were looked at the last time, when Thatcher and Fox Hill were added, there was some discussion about adding Gay and Clabbertree Street, and I think that one or both are county roads, and that was considered a factor in whether we could.
No, no.
I think it was a concern at the time that we would need the county to weigh in on whether we made them scenic roads. I don't know if that's still the case.
I don't think so. I don't recall that. I know specifically that a resident of Gay Street got up and spoke against it and convinced people to vote against Gay Street specifically. The other streets went through and Gay Street does not. I don't remember what happened with Clabbertree Street, but I'm pretty sure it was nominated. I don't know why. And another example, Thatcher Street, the first time it was brought up, there was a lot of opposition. And a number of years later, it's brought up again, and everyone was in favor of it. So, and I think the same thing is probably true of Gay Street now. So I think if someone requests Gay Street be put on, I think there's a very good chance of getting through. And the same thing with Clabbertree Street. And you can check on it. So Canton Street and is
Kent Street
is a,
was added.
right, and that's a.
That's a scenic way.
That's
That's
a
a
county road.
That's a
right,
county road,
Right.
yeah. So I don't think that's an issue. I think something happened, I know what happened with Gay Street. I recall that vividly. How someone spoke against it, and he was a very convincing person, and so he was voted down. And I do not remember Clapper, but I'm sure we should bring them both
Reconsider
up
those,
again.
yeah.
But I don't know that we should put that as a recommendation in here, because it's not really an open space issue. It's related to this kind
I
of thing.
think it's more of a general, like,
Yeah, it doesn't
really?
create
It's
any
not on
open
there?
space reserve, it doesn't do anything for open space, it's a
No.
nice thing to do.
But that could come into the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
okay.
So-
Gay Street with the sidewalk, I don't know if scenic road and sidewalks go together.
So, it would complicate putting in sidewalks a little bit, meaning it would have to go to the planning board to approve anything they do to move the stone walls or cut down any trees.
Is that gonna happen?
That'd be another step in the process.
That's what he talked about.
Huh? Is it gonna
There's
happen?
there's a design in
Look-
progress.
I saw the
right now.
design. I
Looking
just-
at what we have to go through for the Gay Street sidewalks, in other words, convincing everyone it's a good thing and getting the money for it, having a scenic road approval is probably the least difficult of those.
Yeah. Okay. It's just more of an observation. So, page 26. So we suggest adding the 8 interests of the State Wetlands Protection Act within this rating that we've listed below here. Those are our guidelines that we go by, so.
I like the shellfish one.
Yeah.
Would you want that under this paragraph for wetlands protection bylaw?
Bylaw, right, yeah.
So should that be expanded to
That's
Wetlands
really-
Protection Bylaw and Wetlands Protection Act?
Yep. Because that's our guiding, right? That's our guiding.
Or would you want it to be a separate paragraph? Do you want them combined?
Page 26. Oh, you have a different page 26 than I do.
I do.
Twenty-three on my,
What
Is
does
this
it look
one?
like?
Wetlands Protection Bylaw.
yeah,
So
it
there's
would
this
be
a
better as
bylaw.
separate, its own section.
It might
Yeah,
have
and
to
then
be
make
its
it-
own section, yeah,
Wetlands
underneath,
Protection
yeah.
Act, yeah.
Where did you get that? Should have mentioned this should be near the water resources section. So we're on page 32. So mention should be made in the water resources section and elsewhere of the conversion of open water bodies and vegetable wetlands due to unmitigated runoff causing accelerated, I can't pronounce this word, so eutrophication in combination with invasive vegetation. So, I mean,
Actually, you know where that, I think that fits better under environmental challenges, the environmental challenges section.
oh, that's actually, that's later on, right? Yeah. So it is listed there. You got that? Page 38. Don't be afraid to chime in here. Page 38, I believe Wentworth. I believe Wentworth, California also has tussock and brush and would be surprised if there isn't more elsewhere in town.
I think that's supposed to be street.
Well, Wentworth Street, yeah.
I know, I was looking for
Yeah.
that.
Conservation area, Wentworth Conservation Area.
Yeah.
Oh, conservation area, yeah.
Well, while we're on page 38, it mentions northern Orioles, and they're back to being called Baltimore Orioles now.
Are they really?
Yes. Keeps you on your toes. It's sometimes annoying, but they are Baltimore Orioles.
38, bullet 10. What was he worried about in that one of the
The
bullet
people
points?
that-
This is awkwardly written.
The people who do all this,
10?
really into this bird stuff,
Or
they
10,
have big
okay,
meetings
I
and
don't
they
know.
decide to
Old
rename
cemetery.
birds and not,
And it's
sometimes
annual Memorial Day, isn't it?
they get a little carried away.
So unique environments in town. What's
That
the
is-
next page? I don't have the same as you.
You know, the next page. Maybe it is the next page.
But I would come up with a better list of some of the birds, actually.
Town hall, community. I can't remember what he was thinking was awkwardly written. Bullet 10. There it is. 1, 2.
So he has a comment here, John Rogers had a comment, page 38, bullet 10 is awkwardly written.
It doesn't seem true.
Rich,
It says the only bit of marsh is located along the Neponset River. It is a chest-high growth in a variety of perennial wet site plants. So I imagine the comment is that's not the only bit of marsh, there's other marsh in town.
I don't know what the-
That is it. That's what he was talking about.
Yeah.
38 bullet 11. Mention,
I would say the only extensive marshland in town.
you think?
Where are the extensive marshlands in Westwood, other
How
than?
about instead of
along
saying it's the only
Neponset?
one in town, how about just saying there is extensive marshland along the Neponset River?
Yeah. That's more clear. Mention the conversion of open water wetlands to. I already read that. So, page 40, shouldn't Wentworth Hall and Islington Library be on this list? Page 40. Of.
See all these
The
lists?
historical, yeah.
I'd argue town hall should also be on it.
Town hall, yeah.
So while we're on page 38, 39, the list of the
Those-
streets,
Sure,
it
yeah,
says
well,
Gay
discussion.
Street, a scenic
What's that?
road, provides glimpses of open fields, wooded areas, and old stone walls. That's very unfortunate because in both our comprehensive plan and in this open space recreation plan, people pointed out Gay Street with the open fields, and the fields have all either been, have
So this is all done.
had houses built on them, or they've been grown back into forests, or early forests.
We just did that one.
The only field that we have, and that's protected as a field, is the one on Clappertree Street, which the land trust
Manages.
has a conservation easement on it, and manages and stipulates usually, cut once a year and after September.
Okay.
Is that on Gay Street or, that's on Clapham?
That's a Clappertree
Clappertree,
Street,
yeah.
behind the bean farm.
Oh, all right, yep. Very nice.
So there's also a field
That
that's
should be
part of the
fine.
Fox Hill Estates subdivision that requires trimming every so often. So there's a field at the corner of Gay and
Who does the
Troxel.
trimming? Is it-
Yeah, and
is
they
the
actually did
town,
cut
the
it,
highway
though.
department?
The town can do it, or the homeowners can do it. I don't think the homeowners have done it yet, so I think
No,
when it
the
has been
homeowners
done.
done
it's
it.
I
done
actually
by the
did
town.
see some cutting going on, but they haven't done it enough such that it's largely become, going back into a forest.
And then there are a couple of other, if you go further up Gay Street, the old Mulvey Hill Farm, on the left side of the road, just past Sandy Valley Road, that still does have a field. Kind of falls down into the meadow right across from Milk Street. So there are a couple of open fields still visible on.
Yeah,
Gay
that's the
Street.
one that I'm familiar with. It's near,
Used to be a dairy farm, right across from the intersection with Milk Street. So you can still see a field there.
How about-
I think it's near Duncan's property.
It's not protected, no, it's just a
And
private
cut probably
parcel that
too-
the owners
Yeah,
cut.
it's probably cut too often that we could call it an open field. That's the problem.
Even though it's not
See, it's going right
capitalized,
now.
the term scenic road, since it's not a scenic road, we should probably take off scenic and
How
just
about
say.
bucolic?
Yeah, excellent.
What did you put, what did you
What
say
did you
now?
say?
A bucolic road
Oh,
instead of
okay.
scenic, so that people don't think that it's
Yeah.
an official scenic road. What's that?
Sounds like a disease.
It does.
All right.
So number
Is that all right?
13 on page 42 actually addresses what we talked about earlier, adding the 8 interests of the Westwood Protection Act, Wetland
Wetland
Protection
Protection
Act.
Act, yeah.
Thank you.
Which one you want?
That's number 13. It was on page 44, 42. Page 44, the middle sentence,
Wait, on 42, do you wanna add the 8 interests again here?
so I think you mentioned it earlier, I think it's just a duplication of what we were talking about. If you want to put it just in the environmental challenges section.
Right,
And-
the
and-
beautification and the runoff,
Yep.
but the 8 interests, do you want them listed, is that, are you saying you want those
Yeah.
listed again?
With, yeah.
Okay.
Page 44. The middle sentence in the middle paragraph is not correct and could be, while a changing climate invites new species to the area, it also has and will continue causing more frequent and more intense rainfall, as well as more and longer periods of drought. Okay. Page 45.
Table.
Is that on the table? So is that the table?
So is that,
No, I'm not gonna add it a third
so
time.
is that true for this Westwood, this area, that the drought periods will be longer and the rainy
Yes.
periods will be shorter, but when we do have the rain, they'll be more intense?
Exactly. Which one should I go to?
Go to table 12.
Yeah, table 12, on, what page is that?
I have
45?
it on 54.
She has it on 54. Which one is it? Is it the,
Just one comment going back to 15. So I would be
sorry.
concerned, we now have 3 places where
Yeah,
you're looking
we're-
to add the aid interest. I think that's really duplicative.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think we don't agree with that one.
We're happy eliminating that right now.
Okay. So then going on to 16.
Yeah. 16, table 12, there is no definition given of the column item condition. Where does it say that? Okay. And they are all stated as goods, which doesn't seem meaningful at all.
Isn't the right one, 'cause that's the one
Because we're
about.
talking about cleaning them up and straightening them up, and they're really not.
Right.
In good
so
condition.
That was the default category that
Okay.
we were looking for the Conservation Commission to actually rate what they were.
Oh.
So that was an assignment, I think, back in January, and I don't think we ever received any
Okay.
comments on that.
Well,
So
Homework.
they say
See?
good now.
Didn't see that one
See,
coming.
we're on it now.
We would be happy to hear what your position is on all of those properties.
So what, can we get back
Okay.
to you on that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just
So-
report on what they are and describe them in whatever terms you like. So it could be as descriptive as you want. We can-
Well,
that's
now
a
it's all
changeable
snowy out
size
there.
box.
Look at that snow coming down, wow.
Oh,
It looks so pretty.
All right.
I know.
Boy, that was embarrassing.
Yeah, we need that.
Page 74. Page 74, management needs. So, management needs, in part to be consistent with the first sentence in the first paragraph, recommend that the last sentence in the paragraph start, the resulting revenues could be used for maintaining, enhancing, and acquiring open space recreation. So that is, do you see that? Management needs.
Yep.
All right, so again, we should probably mention Community Preservation Act as a means wherever it's appropriate, like right here. But at one place, we should go into it in detail and just keep all those descriptions in that one spot, right?
Mhm.
And that one spot is under the,
Management needs.
I looked to Gino for that. Where would you think we should have an expanded discussion of CPA?
I think this is a good spot. But I think also it should be in
Challenges.
the action plan section,
Okay.
not in the table. I mean, the table mentions it, but there should be a narrative in the action plan section that addresses a lot of the points that Mr. Donahue had made.
right, but the
But
action,
here too, it could
but
be.
the action plan is, it's really a table, so it's hard to get,
Yeah,
you
that's
can't
true.
probably get a lot of things in there. So,
I don't know where the action plan is. What page is the action plan on?
so that's at the very, almost at the end.
It's very end, right?
78, or around 78.
When you see those tables, near the,
It's just before that. Don't
Starting.
page on.
on mine, it's starting on page 82.
It's page
Tries to
78.
invent supply his life.
The recreation goals and objectives, that's what I have.
Here it is.
The first page of the action plan has 2 short paragraphs. One of which mentions the CPA, so it could be expanded there,
That would be good,
as
yeah.
well as in the management needs section.
To add the items that we just suggested?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so
Okay.
we should decide exactly where we'll go. We can, we don't have to do it here. But we decide where it goes in one place, and have it says something like management needs. We really need a heading. It says, recommendation of the Community Preservation Act, and then go into detail on that. So, fine.
Would it be worth including any of the research in an appendix? Because there is extensive research on the CPA. Is that
Sure, we could do that.
So we'll have a discussion, a narrative discussion in the plan, and then take everything you presented at a prior meeting and put it as an appendix. So someone who really does want to delve into
It's like I
the
did
details
that wrong.
has that opportunity.
I do think it's helpful to see what other towns have done,
I didn't have my-
we might do it, but,
I mean, like the tables you just showed us, things like that. Yeah.
All right, so
I care about the
we've taken all the written comments. Do you wanna then go around the table and see if anyone has any additional comments, or do you wanna go page by page and, or section by section and have people weigh in when they have a thought on something?
I suggest go person by person, I mean, feedback might take a little while. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
I mean, I have a written up page and I can submit this, we don't have to go through the whole thing.
But is it substantive or is just
I think the idea is to
wording?
discuss it tonight so that everybody gets to weigh in.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if there's anything that,
Lot.
if there's anything that needs any kind of discussion or agreement, then we should present it now.
So,
I have some things I'd be happy to write up if you're interested. There's, on page 39, there's about 3 or 4 items on historical things, and I asked somebody from the Historical Society and the Historical Commission to look at it, and they just would suggest that a little bit more could be written about the Fisher School, Colburn School, the Blue Hart Tavern, and the Old Baker, you know. So if you'd like some more written materials,
Sure.
they'd be happy to submit it. They just don't know if you didn't want any more, but there's a lot more that can be said about them that would be of interest to a reader, if you'd like that. So, a second issue has to do with the skating rinks. It's mentioned throughout as a priority, a goal, et cetera. There's a mention that we talked to the Norwood people. Norwood did have, the state rep got approval from the state of Massachusetts to build a rink in Norwood. State requires Norwood to come up with $1 million. Norwood said, forget it. The other issue that is relatively new is the Boston Skating Club, which is one of the premier skating clubs in the United States. It's where Olympians train. They have big performances there, national. They've just bought 3 acres, not 3. They're gonna put in 3 skating rinks on University Ave, where the par 3 golf course used to be. And so I met with them. They were at the Westwood Day. They had a booth. I don't know if any of you had a chance. So, you're really serious about this? They said, oh yeah, 2 figure skating rinks and 1 ice hockey rink. Now, they also have very deep pockets, you know, it's endowed, it's very rich. So I think what we should be doing, and maybe have reference to that here, is that, you know, as we think about our own indoor skating rink, if there is gonna be a rink down there, we should get on the ground floor. Town officials, I've already bugged Mike Gillette, there's a Mrs. Curtin who was at Westwood Youth Hockey at one time with her kids, who's the treasurer of the Boston Skating Club. So it would be smart to mention how important this opportunity is. If we could get people involved, say, would like to support you, you're technically in Norwood, but you gotta go through Westwood to get there. Would love to help you, and would like to get ice time. You can use a figure skating rink for hockey too. You know, you just go crosswise to little kids. So the town is desperate. Our high school kids do practice. I had 4 kids do it. They get up at 5 in the morning on a school day and go out. So I think we should need to address that. I'd be happy to write some stuff up on it, on how, in addition to talking to Norwood, we should be talking to the Boston Skating Club. We should have town officials or volunteers to get involved in the process so we could get ice time access. I also talked with the current president of Westwood Youth Hockey about it, and he said, we need ice time, no matter where we can get it, because all these other towns scoop it up. There is, in Brookline, an outdoor artificial rink that's been there for like 50 years. The Lars Anderson has it. And what that allows you to do, it's outdoors, but it's artificial ice, so you don't have to wait for the pond to freeze. You know, the pipes are underneath it, so you put the water down. So from November to March, you're skating. And you can skate after school. They have lights up, so you have public skating at night. Families can go listen to music and skate around. So it would be worth putting in here that as an option to look at. It's much, much less expensive than a facility that's being talked about here. So I would just suggest these are things that might be worth, as we get into looking at all these different options, even to look at that as an option, because they're much cheaper to put in. The only downside is when it snows, you gotta go out and get the snow off, but that's not a big problem for people to do it. So I'd be happy to write that up if you'd like to proceed to add those pieces to what's here.
I think the second action item under Recreation Goal 6 was intended to refer to the Norwood, not only the Norwood Town proposal that they were looking at a rink, but to the Boston Skating Club rink. So I think we just need to reword that to to address that. And then my question is, how much detail would we go in with these action items? I don't think we'd want to write a whole section about specifically our conversations with Norwood. I think that would be just an action item.
Well, on
Not
page
detail
80,
exactly what the conversations are, but
on page 80, we have under goal 6, about 4 or 5 bullets about the skating rink, you know?
Right.
And I think we could modify it a little bit to,
I
we're
think so
looking
too.
into other options in addition to building our own indoor skating rink, which I don't think will ever happen relative to what it's gonna cost. One other thing I asked people about was we do talk about more fields and additional fields, and the feedback I got from the people I talked to who were involved in soccer and lacrosse and all of this, is we need a third artificial turf field. We have 2. So what happens with the artificial turf, not multi-purpose is used, which means multiple sports, but the artificial turf allows you to use it when the other fields can't be used because of the mud. There's just so much grass that can be used before it gets ruined, and they don't let anybody on the fields because the grass has to come back. So just the word, it's in here someplace a couple of times, but artificial turf on Thurston, on one of these fields that we have, was the feedback I got from the people looking for more places to play. It's not just another one, but one that allows you to play 3 or 4 times as much as a grass field. And we have 2 already, the high school field and the field up behind the high school are artificial, and they're heavily used even at night with lights on, kids are out there practicing. So that's
So I think that also, so if you look at page 78, I think we just need to expand the language if it's not clear that that's what we were talking about. If you look at the objectives under goal 2 on page 78, one of them is to establish the use and maintenance plans for all the fields, including needed improvements such as artificial turf. I think
Addresses
I think the Recreation Commission was getting into that.
Can you tell us who provided you that feedback, so we can find out if that's different from the groups that we're hearing from the Recreation
Because
Commission?
we're also hearing that lighting is a
Lighted
needed
fields,
thing,
yeah.
lighted fields, and so I think there's sort of 2 conversations happening here. And some seem to feel that the artificial turf is the important component where you get on the fields earlier in the spring, and your condition of the field turf isn't as vulnerable, and then others seem to feel that lighting, expanding the evening use is more important because that's when volunteer coaches are available.
And still others want both, lighted,
Yeah,
artificial
they're
turf.
Or
I
let's
think-
just do it all.
They're
you know,
one-
one doesn't-
one-
I think you need them all.
As you know, the field behind the high school is lights and artificial. The high school
Yeah,
is
so we
lights.
have 2 lit turf
Right.
fields.
So they would
and-
come together. I think the
you know-
lighting would be just what you would add to the
Yeah, so
turf.
I guess if the question comes down to the cost or needing to prioritize one
Yeah.
first and, you know, take it in steps, what would, yeah, I think we just wanna start getting a handle on what would the preference be.
Yeah, so are there groups that you're hearing from that maybe we're not hearing from, which, do you
Well, I
mind
think
sharing?
the groups are the lacrosse people, soccer people,
Okay.
who are saying they would like turf
Yeah.
with lights ideally.
Yep.
And the downside of grass, which I wasn't fully aware of, there's certain times of year it's there, but you can't use it because you destroyed it.
Right.
Doesn't come up.
Correct,
There's
yeah.
just so much pounding grass can take, and that, so you get much more use. And if you can add lights to it, as the 2 we have lights, that's ideal.
Expand.
So, can I speak, because I'm not a soccer representative, so Chuck Sheehan, who's our director of fields, I think from a cost benefit analysis, my sense is as a first priority, he would say, let's get lights up.
Yeah, that's
Because my sense is, you can tell me probably, it's not gonna cost that much, and particularly in the fall, we will, there's like, even in the spring, when we have more lacrosse conflicts, that we could have Thurston, multiple fields on Thurston, that we could use at 8, up till 9 o'clock. I think that was the first, of course, we'd love more turf, because the field
Yeah,
gets
the fall
overused.
in particular, as it gets dark.
Well, yeah, so, I think, of course, we run both, but my sense is the first priority, if we could get lights up, that would actually alleviate, I know from Chuck's perspective, who knows better than I do, from the field perspective, that would alleviate a lot of our issues.
I'd say that has been, more the priority that I've heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we love both, of course, but
All right, I'm listening to this, and it sounds to me like, first of all, they're both buried in here under these bullets and sub-bullets, and they really need to be brought up. But the question is, should they be separate goals? Are they that important that we should pull this out of and have a goal?
It might help soften the cushion of the,
Goal 2, and then have,
Increase.
the next goal 3 would be, increase the number of fields with artificial turf as appropriate, or as, and and then have another one, goal 4, which says, light fields where,
I would do
are
just
also
the opposite,
appropriate.
lighting first, we just
Yeah.
Oh, it
said,
doesn't matter,
and then,
yeah,
and then
okay.
turf after
Yeah.
that. Keep in mind, this is gonna be a plan that's in place for probably another 7 years, so we don't wanna be overly specific.
Yeah,
So,
and then I
but-
would say additional, field space as well is still under review if there's land available to build.
Right, so I think it's separate goals. One goal is to improve the existing fields, and that would be by adding lighting, possibly adding artificial turf, and the other would be expanding to new fields.
And ultimately, the committee that's chosen to make these decisions, you know, they're not gonna say, here's $800,000, go do what, you know, there's gonna be multiple things being done. So what can I do for $100,000 in my priority? I mean, there's gonna
So,
be negotiations. Yep.
Are these goals, 1, 2, 3, is that a priority order, or just?
I think it's going to need to be a priority order, yes.
So
Well, on the topic, it says, this might sound so, but on one of the wording, it says field, one Thurston field, can we make that just more
Yeah.
broad, as opposed to saying field, because that
Yeah.
implies it's gonna be literally on one field.
yeah, yeah, we wanna take that one out.
Yeah, okay, okay,
and-
make it
And,
just
and
broader.
say, yeah, make it broad and
Yeah.
have a separate goal. So then my question now is, since they are fairly priority goals here, do we wanna reorder any of these and add in a single goal to put artificial turf
I think that's an
and
objective.
lighting and artificial.
So I think the
Objective
goal
for
is still
improvements
to
is,
expand the opportunities for extended
Yeah.
use of the recreation fields and facilities to meet the needed demand. And objectives would be to add lighting
How is it that?
to one or more existing
Okay.
fields, and then to add artificial turf to
Spending
one or more
$1 million
existing
for
fields.
nice.
And then another one would be to consider acquiring and developing new recreation fields.
So that would be under goal 2.
I think that's all under goal 2.
And
Those
those
are
would
all
be
objectives.
separate
And we've
goals.
already,
Separate bullet
and
points.
we've already reordered these up front, so we'll reorder them based on what we did up front.
So,
All right, anyone else have a, Nicole, did you want to go through your list?
Yeah,
That's what we felt they were gonna be needed. I thought they were, it was a Connor statement.
okay, so page 55.
That's the number.
Oh, it's, all they wanna do is use the funds.
so she was at, you
They
were,
got pipes there. They never
so
had-
she could give us a room
Pipes all
on.
through our town to get fresh water. That's my area. I don't think about that.
So, it talks about School Street Playground. The age group there should be listed as 2 to 12 for the playground.
Okay, 2 to 12 years. And
Which table
With
is it?
skates now.
So this is page
under
55.
public and private recreation facilities, it's a paragraph, it's a narrative, it's not a table. It's before table 13, between 12 and 13.
Everybody's funds is around. No, he gets-
Yeah.
So now it would say School Street Playground for 2 to 12-year-olds with 2 to 12
Yes.
fields.
And
That was
then,
eighth grade
same thing
too.
for a tot lot, the next one is, 2 to 5-year-olds.
Okay.
No, straight. I put it right in the freezer. Let it freeze all up.
School Street was, what was the age again for
2
that?
to
2 to
12.
12.
Oh, me?
Tot lot is 2 to 5. And, June Street should have the T-ball field removed.
I lost me.
The
June
T-ball
Street
field is
Playground no longer has a T-ball
field,
field.
yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, page 57, the table,
Table 14.
yeah. So, first thing, the high school practice field is, listed below, I think I was, Flay Hive listed as football. This was confusing to me, they had the high school practice field
I don't see that. Mine doesn't do that.
is listed on page 58.
I'm looking at table 13.
These go together, yeah.
Yes, it's at one table, on two sheets.
Well, this is next page two.
Wait a minute. Todd's looking at it. Todd, you reading it? It's good. It's good
And
stuff.
play hide is football.
And tell me what chime in.
I think just clarifying there between the practice field and the play hide football field.
I'm not sure why there's a separate category for high school practice fields. It looks like,
It's just listed twice, yeah, and it was a little confusing because it listed football below. So maybe those
Does
just
it mean the
combined.
multi-purpose field behind?
I think that, so I think on the first section of the chart, high school practice field is referring to the multipurpose field. And then on the next page, Westwood High School is referring not only to Fly High, but to the baseball fields
So
as
can we
well.
just get rid of the first one because it's
Yeah,
included?
and just put them all on Westwood High
It
School.
also says multi-purpose,
And then
yeah.
under, I would also add track, I don't think is listed for high school.
Right.
Under Morrison, need to remove the tennis court and add softball. The June Street playground condition should now be listed as excellent. That has just been.
And it doesn't have
finished.
fields now, it's just a playground, right?
Yeah, it does have, a field, but it's no,
But not
it's
a
just a
playing
practice.
field, just,
Exactly,
so I don't think
no
we mentioned
specific
that, right?
field.
In excellent condition.
Yeah, and then does it remove currently out of service? Yeah, so just changing the. Sheehan, I don't know what we wanna do there, we could, there's
Baseball,
nothing
soccer, and
listed at
lacrosse,
Sheehan
right?
for, tennis, or what we're looking at is pickleball at that site, so I don't know if we wanna list that in.
So I think this is for existing, so since
Yeah.
it's not there now,
So does tennis need, I mean, do we?
I don't think
Just
I'd call it
say
tennis,
doesn't
it's just a
call it
fenced in,
So just
yeah, I,
leave
I
it
wouldn't
at
call
open.
attention to it
It
at all.
doesn't.
but I would add soccer and lacrosse to that, baseball, soccer, and lacrosse.
Baseball in that too. It's playground. Is that correct?
Oh, instead
Dennis?
of playground, it says
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, and the one above it too.
What is it, what does it say? Oh.
There's a typo, it's
Okay.
playground instead of playground.
That's gonna be.
At Downey School and Sheehan School.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, playground.
It's a total separate.
Sounds like there's another
And
field
then
missing
these
for high
two
school.
we had June Street and
There's a
School
lacrosse
Street.
ball.
Right, that's right, okay, we'll add that.
We have June Street and School Street listed, we do not have the tot lot listed. So should we add playground, tot lot?
Yes. Okay.
Ken, Downey has like a community garden thing, would that be something to list on here, or is that just a school?
That's
School
school.
asset,
related,
okay.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, and then just the spelling, Downey and Sheehan have the playground spelling wrong. All right, the page
About that.
66 is my next. There was a section in red, I did pull the statistics, if you want, Nora, I can give you the stats.
Okay.
We pulled the recreation based
That
on,
would be great.
views and the tweets.
All right, so if you could just email those.
Yep. Page 69. Page 69, I was wondering what was the Morrison Park usage? I don't know if this, was this? This was just directly from the survey though, correct? So if, is this just what was answered in the survey? Okay, so if it wasn't brought up, then it just won't appear here, is that right?
Correct.
Page 69, I believe pickleball was brought up here. It's, I'm not sure exactly where. And it should just be one word for pickleball, not two.
So one more.
Your computer will change it every time.
Yeah.
I have to teach
So
my
where does that
computer
go?
that. At the very bottom, the third sentence up, tennis and pickleball courts. Page 70. So the chart, table 18 on page 70. I think this came, and is this from what we compared other towns? I just was wondering if we should add, Westwood has an indoor pool that's not listed on here, so I just think.
So
we
this
got
outdoor
listed as
swim,
a
you want another
0, so we
category?
could just list indoor there.
Indoor swim.
Yeah.
How about since, how about if we put it as?
Just
no,
swim,
We just do
and then
swim at the top
instead
and
of
then
saying
say
no, we say
indoor.
indoor.
Cause,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, like I think Concord
Yeah, I
is
think
listed
outdoor
as
swim
one,
was the
and that's
category
indoor
from the
pool
last
in Concord.
plan, but we don't have to leave it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have to check on that. I would imagine it means they have a pool, but we should check.
Yeah, Concord does have indoor.
Indoor, okay, so we'll change Concord to indoor and Westwood.
Some of these towns probably have both indoor and outdoor, and we didn't do that research.
Right, so Sudbury has indoor,
So
Bedford,
Sudbury's only listed as a pond. They have a pool
yeah,
as
and they
well.
have indoor pool as well. Trying to think.
Canton,
Canton does not have indoor.
so we'll note that that's an outdoor pool.
That's outdoor, Concord has
Anything that's
indoor.
listed on here is outdoor. I
Medfield
think I'm
has
the
a
one who
pond,
looked those up.
Sharon
But
has.
some might have both, so if we're gonna make it swim, we
Right,
might wanna
so
know which towns have both
Sudbury
indoor and
should say
outdoor.
indoor, I can have Sue look at this too, she can tell me in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
All right, so if you can just send that along as well.
All right, yeah, if there's
Yeah,
any others,
yeah,
I
if
know,
you, if you change it to swim, you can write indoor, outdoor, or both.
Right,
Yeah.
Well, you might wanna say pool versus pond.
Right.
too, but-
so pond plus indoor plus outdoor.
But yeah, but this category was simply outdoor, so if you
Okay.
see
They might have an
something
outdoor
listed
pool, so it could be
there,
pond,
it's outdoor.
pool,
Right, right,
outdoor
so-
pool, indoor pool.
We'll get the additional information.
page 91.
Open space goal 3.
Yeah, so under where it says collaborate with schools, I just thought we would consider adding rec to that. Page 91, there's an action plan, so it starts listing out other agencies and main agencies.
Okay. So under an other agency, you want to add recreation?
Yep.
And then we can add that to the text as well, collaborate with schools, recreation department, and/or service organization.
under which goal?
This is open space goal 3 on page 91.
We also want to add in the Westwood Community
Go
Trails
for it,
Program.
or page behind. Or not, two pages behind.
Page 93.
This is recreation goal 1.
Um,
Oh, wait, a minute, is this recreation? No, it's open space.
So the first section with updating the inventory, so I would recommend removing DPW from that, because it looks like it's talking about inventory of programs. I don't know if that was maybe confused with the
With the
DPW
inventory
and rec work
right,
together on the inventory for the maintenance.
for the facilities,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
And then
Would
the
you-
last box.
Is
on
there
the-
anyone else that you work on programs with? Early education or?
So human services, we could list those
Okay. So we'll put them as another.
agencies. The last box, talking about the 55 plus, I would maybe put COA as the lead agency
Okay.
and rec
And
as support.
recreation as the other?
Yep.
All right.
And then on page 94, a similar thing, to switch rec and DPW for the maintenance plans. I think
Okay.
DPW would be fine for maintenance. Same page, undertake accessibility improvements. I think the disability commission should be listed there. I think rec, DPW, and disability commission could all be listed as leads there.
Well, I think we're trying to assign one lead, because when we have more than one, no one knows who takes the initiative, so
No,
I
not
think we
it.
have to,
Just kidding.
I think it's best to have one lead and the
I mean,
others,
I think.
they can be equal partners,
Yeah,
but,
I mean, I don't wanna speak for the disability commission, I don't know if that would be a role of a commission, but,
We could probably tell you what to do, but somebody else would have to do it.
okay. So,
well, the lead agency is simply responsible for
so
taking
this
charge
is
of the
specifically
initiative.
for playgrounds? Is that right?
This is for improvements to playgrounds.
Right.
So do you want to put disability commission as the lead agent?
I mean, it sounds like that would be more of a like a advisory kind of a, yeah. It's probably rec would be the lead. Then the last one, Wentworth Hall, recommend listing library under the other agencies as well. And then page 99, I think that there was this is maybe the ice rink discussion. The discussion we had about the hockey rinks, I just, yeah, I would recommend that we look at maybe the town administration to take the lead on that at this point. It seems unknown, it is looking like that might be a private entity from what I'm hearing, that would be having, it wouldn't necessarily be a town-operated
It'd be a hard sell
function.
anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that recreation department would take the lead on that.
If it were an outdoor rink, artificial, that's something,
That
The town
potentially
could
could be
handle,
run by
but
the recreation
anything, anything
department.
bigger than that
Correct.
is a private or
It's, yeah,
get access to the other one.
I mean, unless,
could be
unless the town were gonna
public.
decide to set up an enterprise fund and.
Right, and then I think we'd also want to add the school to the other agencies, because the school teams would also be involved in the discussion. Okay, so we'll make Board of Selectmen the lead agency. And then move recreation and add schools to other agencies.
That was it, sorry.
All right,
Go out.
no one else has written comments?
I just have a few.
huge in Westfield.
Oh, on page 55, they were talking about what's to watch, and I think I heard chatting that might be sold. If it was, would that still be available to the town? We
Yes,
don't
so
know.
there's a proposal that's going before the planning board on December 11th. There's a company called the Green Company who has a P&S agreement with the owners of Westwood Lodge Hospital, and they're proposing a residential development. They would take, create 6 lots along Winter Street and Flower Tree. Yes, so if you want more information, it's on the planning board website, but it would be 6 single-family residential lots along Winter Street and Flower Tree Street, and then the interior portion would be 40 age-restricted townhomes, and they would keep the field and give the field to the town and add 40 parking spaces adjacent to the field. So that's the proposal,
December
It's going to the planning board on December 11th.
Has what kind of, as a open space?
No, as a lacrosse and soccer fields,
No.
we continue to use, it's an open space residential
So
development plan.
With the senior housing component?
Right.
Okay.
Could I just small comments for the one?
All right.
for one? Just, so you can pull a few comments, page 94, on the undertaken improvements in the playgrounds. You might want to add as funding sources options. I know PTOs and other nonprofits like Lions Clubs help support playgrounds, so we may want to just add them as funding sources on the 94. And then the other question, so this is more of a global comment, where it says, so page 95, so the goals. So instead of school, in the second column on other agencies, instead of school department school department, I would actually change it to the, what's it called, the school building committee. There's gonna be a committee set up that actually really governs whatever we decide to do with this, facility. It's not so much
That was our
administrative.
general
So
comment.
replace that.
The whole thing.
And the only question, again, I don't, it's fine, I think it is the last one on 95. And I think
Not on TV.
the first half of that bullet on how, what we decide to do if we consolidate with the new building will probably be more governed by the school building committee as opposed to the board of selectmen. I think if we decide
So
to
we'll
do
make
something
them
else,
lead
I might
agency.
separate them. If they decide to do something else, build another rec facility, that would probably be the board of selectmen.
It is just-
Okay.
And then just one final, well, the global comment, is there, and again, I'm new to this, replacing Chuck, is there as part of this anything that kind of looks at just broadly like cost benefit or anything, is that not part of a document like this? I'm just
No, this doesn't get into that level of detail. That's one of the action plans to investigate, to look into it, but it doesn't do the research.
Okay, that's it.
I just got a couple of quick thoughts. One is, on the page 60, we talk about private recreation properties, and it mentions the Norfolk Golf Club, which is in Westwood, and when we get to working with private groups, they allow the Westwood High School kids to use the golf course for practices and games, matches. And then we also don't list Dedham Country and Polo, although half the golf course is in Westwood. You know, the clubhouse isn't, but the course is on Westwood land. And I think at some place it might be worth, saying about this private-public relationship of their letting Westwood High kids use their golf course for practice and matches. Occasionally that has happened because some of the kids in the high school team had family memberships there, but it isn't a standard thing. So the other thing on there's a discussion here of the Westwood Media Center, and I don't know if they've ever done this, but they're very innovative people, but if they could do like a walk through one of the, properties for the public to see what's it like to walk through Little Woods,
Well, we have again, and we'll put it in here, we have the Westwood Community Trails Program now, which is going to be doing things like that and organizing hikes and walks.
Well,
And-
that'd be wonderful.
And
Then
they'll
they talk
include-
about,
one of the main things would be including conservation land or any other land that's suitable for hiking
well,
in
I
Westwood.
think for people to watch their TV and to say, hey, we should ought to go out there. I mean, that would be a wonderful way to introduce people to these. The second thing, it would be valuable in here to have maps of like, if you go to these conservation areas, working your park, are there parking
Yeah,
areas?
that's in there, that's.
That's in there,
Yeah.
maps where you can park, okay, that'd be
Yeah.
great. And then there's a discussion of the school kids maybe taking walks through the parks, as a part of the, a morning session where they could take the kids out and let them learn by doing conservation walks. I think that could be a valuable program if it doesn't exist already to, it's one grade every year, they do a walk through the parks with some guidance.
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly how the best way to organize that is. I know that the Land Trust has done, when they had their art exhibit every year, and they would do something with the school kids, and they would actually get them out there for a session on some of the property and to start working on creating things, artworks that are related to nature and outdoors. So that's something to think about.
All right, did anyone else have any specific questions or comments on any sections?
I just have a comment about the report itself. There's a lot of typos in the report. Is that what you're gonna go through? Okay.
That'll be the last step.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so nothing, substantive, as far as the goals, the priorities and things like that, that's what we really want to wrap up today.
All right, so Wiz will work on the next draft of this and send that around to everyone. And what you could do is if you see further comments, I don't think we want to make any substantive changes beyond what we've discussed today because we won't be meeting again before it goes to the planning board. But if you have any specific comments that are related to your area, send them back. Don't reply all, just reply to me and I'll make sure it gets to Gino and Steve. And then we'll get you out the very final draft. It will go to the planning board for a hearing beginning on December 6th. I don't think it'll be a one-night hearing. I think they'll accept the plan, hear comments on it, and then there'll be further discussion. So what we would like to do, though, is send the plan to the planning board with a recommendation from this commission. So if you could, if anyone wants to make a motion to approve the plan as amended with the discussions we've had tonight. To recommend the planning board approval, not to approve it yourselves. Recommend planning board approve the open space recreation plan update.
It's almost a given, but.
Second.
if you want. All in favor?
Aye.
Sounds like a unanimous. Any opposed? So it's unanimous. All right, anything else?
Nope.
I think that's it.
Okay, meeting is
We'll
adjourned.
definitely do that one.
Thank you for all your help.
Definitely do that.
People say, hey, you should do it.